So the media is absolutely freaking out about President Trump and what he said over the weekend, as well as President Putin, because he just got reelected for his presidency. And there's so many things going on, but what you've got to realize as a believer, as a person in this day and age, with the media, with all of the narrative and the propaganda, is that if you're not awake, if you're not in tune with the Lord, you are going to be led down astray. You are going to be brought in hook, line, and sinker to believe something that you should not be believing. Because again, in order to navigate this time, you have to understand the bigger picture with regards to news, with regards to psychology even, and how this whole operation is working. So I'm going to go over that today. I'm going to make some comments. We're going to go over what was said exactly and what the news is saying, because they're panicking right now. They're absolutely going crazy. So let's take a look at what Trump has said over the weekend about the automobile industry.
Mexico has taken, over a period of 30 years, 34% of the automobile manufacturing business in our country. Think of it, went to Mexico. China now is building a couple of massive plants where they're going to build the cars in Mexico and they think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars. They're building massive factories. A friend of mine,
Now, when I look at that, I'm looking at it from a perspective of, okay, he's talking about that this country is not going to be in a good place with respect to this automobile industry and many other things, economically speaking. But people have taken that out of context and the media went on a frenzy. So even this morning, when you look at some of the headlines about how he says there's going to be a bloodbath and making insinuations about violence and just crazy things if he does not get elected, they took it out of context. So let's just listen to somebody that did a very good job responding, because again, this is the reaction that a lot of people now are having because they see through the media. So let's take a look.
So I wake up this morning, and of course there's a well-written, very well thought through, not press release from the Biden-Harris administration that says that Trump is claiming that there's going to be a bloodbath if he doesn't win in November, which is exactly why Mike Pence, of all people, did not support him for re-election. So let me just put this in context. This is the exact same thing they did in the previous election, where they said that Trump mislabeled Mexicans and Hispanic Americans. They took something he said out of context, same exact situation. So I encourage you all to actually watch that clip, because again, this is this mass propaganda, almost drive-by political character assassination that they try to do here. But to put it in perspective, this administration, the Democrat Party, literally has sitting members of Congress, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Nadler, that said that if we don't allow for open borders, if we don't essentially bring in migrant workers, who's going to be in the field to pick the crops, right? You had this administration, this president playing Despacito and his wife calling Hispanic Americans breakfast tacos. And they say that Trump's a racist.
So obviously she's just letting her thoughts through. But the point here is that lots of people are waking up and they're understanding the perspective and what's happening. Let's take a look quickly at what is being said of Putin. So he just won with an 88% or 87 point something percent record turnout and landslide win. Now, a lot of what is being projected is, in some sense, yes, he just won the election and it's objective, but a lot about the opposition that is being brought forth and about protests and just people hating on him and stuff like that. But clearly, the whole country loves him. And then you got guys like Politico who are saying that it was a rigged election and just trying to go deeper into portraying and projecting this narrative that this guy is not a good guy. And of course, if you know the research that I know, and we're all in tune with the Lord and understanding what's going on, we know that it's part of a huge operation that God is using Putin and Russia for a big thing right now, but that he would be hated. One of the prophetic words and one of the things that was said among those that are receiving words from the Lord is that Putin would be used in this time for big things, but that he would have to go through a period of being labeled or shown in a negative light. And so I want to talk about quickly how we, as Christians, we have to be able to be in a better place going into this election, as well as an overall understanding of perceiving the world. And this is what I basically just put together, which is that if you're perceiving somebody objectively, and again, don't look at this like, oh, I know this, because really, I struggle with it at times. Other people watching this struggle with this at times. But God, He does not want us to be struggling with this. He wants us to grow in this as best as possible. How do you perceive someone objectively? You perceive what they did. If it's positive, you view them. This is the lens and the interpretation. This is the first column. You view them positively. The perception is that if they did something positive, then you view it positively. If you view somebody negatively, negatively, then you view them negatively. If you view them neutrally, then you view them, whatever they did, in a neutral way. But what happens in the media, what happens with somebody who is full of hate, what happens with somebody who does not have the Holy Spirit in them, but rather they have demonic either manifestation, oppression, they're overwhelmed with it, or they're just moving with the flow of the world, right? Somebody that is being hated, they're going to see somebody like Trump or Putin that does something positive, they're going to spin it into something that's just neutral. Like, okay, whatever. Like, yeah, he did that. Okay, but whatever. It's just neutral. If they see something neutral, they're going to spin it negatively. They're going to take something that is otherwise neutral. You saw it with the bloodbath. You saw it with the election, just him winning the election, and they're going to spin it in a negative way. If they see something that's negative, oh, brother, it's game over. They're going to spin it in such a way where they look at it as an evil thing. They're going to look at it so evil that they're just going to amplify that message. And this is what happens with anybody, whether it's a political figure, whether it's somebody that somebody that wronged you, that cheated on you, or whatever it is that you just don't like, right? You just have a negative view of them. This is how a lot of people view them. And this is Christians alike. This is all types of people. But if you are filled with love, if you are filled with objectivity, then you would view them in this light, as you see here. Positive to positive, neutral to neutral, negative to negative. Now, let me say this other thing. If you perceive someone that you really like, you got to also be very careful, because just like with what they say with Biden, with anything else that the media loves, people that are in Hollywood that are doing the objective of the devil, they are going to spin what is otherwise positive. And this is us too, right? I'm speaking for us too, that someone you love, right? Your wife, you're going to say something that's just super amazing, just talk it up. Anything that's positive, you're going to perceive them in an ultra positive light. If you're seeing something neutral, you're going to be so biased that you will see it as being super positive. The same goes for negative. If they're doing something negative, you're going to see them as being like very neutral. So it's like, oh, it's no big deal. It's just, they were at fault, but it's no big deal. Now, of course, I'm not saying you shouldn't be gracious and loving and merciful, but you have to see and perceive a action, a word, for what it is, right? I'm not saying that you should not, look at somebody who's doing something neutral and say, oh, I love you, that's great, and, give them words of affirmation. But you have to look at the lens of the interpretation of what that action is and say it for what it is. You have to say it, not in spinning it and making it so that you're suppressing something that should otherwise be brought to light, or you're taking something and you're outright even lying about it. You cannot be doing those things if you want to have a good, objective, righteous way to look at it, right? And so this is very easy to diagnose and look at from a psychological perspective, but we have to be cognizant of this. And so I'm saying this because get ready. Get ready for the narrative war. Get ready for everything this year, for the elections, as well as just many other stories that will come out, because the atmosphere, the tenseness is getting thicker. And so we have to be, as believers, more objective. And so I'm bringing this to your attention as something like, okay, well, that's obvious. I get that. But it's hard because emotions and flesh overwhelm somebody, and you will never see it that way. You will never see, if someone literally comes up to you and says something negative, you're just going to see whether it's racism or stereotyping, whether it's just looking at that person from here on out as just a horrible person from now on. You're not going to see clearly. There's going to be no clarity, objectivity in seeing that and the person. And so if you want to live well through this time, we have to be aware of this, and also how certain people, certain mainstream media, outlets are spinning things in such a way to achieve whatever their hidden objective or motive is. And so again, warning you, but also encouraging you so that we can be better as Christians. So love you guys. Be encouraged. A lot is coming. Talk to you guys very soon.